Hi there, it's great to hear from you again. Linda's voice was soft, as if she was trying to hide her excitement while also covering up the fear and sadness she was feeling. I have to admit it was quite a challenge finding a new phone number for either of you, so how are things going on your end? Stacy hesitated for a moment. Before responding with caution, new phone number, who's this? Stacy interjected. For goodness sake, it's me, your mom. I'm sorry for not calling sooner, but I thought you'd recognize your mother's voice after all these years. Linda replied, her tone tinged with frustration. Stacy smiled faintly, immediately recognizing her. It was her mother's voice, but she was careful to proceed with caution. She didn't want to come across as rude. Oh, hi Mom, she finally responded. You surprised me. I was just being careful not to fall prey to some telephone stalker. Stacy paused, contemplating her next move. Her mother said she'd loved and raised her for over 17 years, but Linda wasn't having it. I don't think the past 3 years qualify as your care or affection, she said. I was almost 14 when you left, and this is the first contact I've had from you in all that time. I'm 17 now. I've been without your maternal love for a long time, Linda. I'm truly sorry. Stacy, back then everything was incredibly difficult and I felt I had no choice but to leave. Let's not dwell on that. I called to check on you and maybe speak with your siblings if they're around now that things have settled. I'm going to be around more for you. I hope we can reconnect and that you can enjoy the benefits of having a wealthy mother. Frank and I are married now, and there's so much I can do for all of my children, you, Rachel, and Josh. Our life now is far better than it was with your father. Don't misunderstand. Your dad is a good man, but he couldn't provide the luxuries Frank does. He spoils me daily, and I love it. Linda's voice was brimming with enthusiasm. I want to show you kids what life is really about and make up for the hard years when we struggled because of your father's modest income. I hope this will help. Stacy was really angry about Linda leaving like that. She loved her dad, Ed Mercer, and thought he was great for stepping up as a single parent when Linda left. He had to raise 2 daughters, one facing teenage challenges and the other just 10 years old, as well as their wild 20-year-old. Stacy's brother Josh also took a lot of pride in her father's ability to turn their lives around after her mother left. Linda had emptied all the family's bank accounts when she left, which led to a financial crisis when she was just 14. Stacy took on the role of homemaker to help her family survive during those tough times. But together, they endured the hardships and her father made life better. Things were wonderful now. It would have been easy for Stacy to blame her mother for their suffering. Her fiery temper, which was well known by all, was ready to strike. But instead, she felt a wave of Stacy was calm and in control as she considered how to conduct herself in this conversation. She knew that if she confronted her mother now, she would likely hang up, and the chance of reconnecting might be lost forever. That wouldn't benefit anyone. Stacy genuinely wanted to rebuild some kind of relationship with her mother. She embraced the calmness and decided to proceed wisely. She wanted to voice her feelings, point out her mother's mistakes, but also leave room for future contact between her siblings and their mother. It was the right approach. Stacy smiled and decided to share a little something with her mother. Mom, I'll send you a picture of myself now, don't hang up. She positioned herself in front of the mirror in her room, sunlight streaming through the window. She smiled at her reflection. Her golden hair was styled elegantly, and her lavender evening dress fitted her gracefully. The floor-length dress was complemented by long white gloves, symbolizing her transition from an awkward girl to a poised young woman. She took a few pictures and sent the best one to her mother. Did you get it? What do you think? She asked impatiently. A long pause followed. Linda finally responded. Her voice was emotional. You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart. I've missed you so much. You've grown so much. Linda's words faltered as she fought back tears. Her large blue-gray eyes and soft features caught people's attention, and her evening gown reflected her delicate elegance. Come on, we need to get a photo of Mom. Stacy said, finding the best angle to capture her sister's beauty. Standing beside Rachel was Janice, a family friend in her mid. Stacy beckoned her to stay in the picture. "Hello, ma'am," Rachel called out playfully. "We'll catch up later," after taking a few shots. "I'm amazed and speechless. You both look stunning, and I'm incredibly proud. I wish I could be there with you." Linda gazed at the pictures of her daughters, her heart aching with regret. "But why are you both dressed up? Are you both going to the prom?" "No," Stacy replied, excitement bubbling in her voice. "It's even. It was better than prom. It was the annual ball you always wanted to be invited to but never were. It was hosted by the Swick and McTaggs." Linda immediately recalled, "Yes, of course I do. That ball was always the social event of the year. I'd give anything to attend that reception. It was only for the most influential and glamorous people in the whole state." "You've been invited," Linda said wistfully. "I've always dreamed of the chance to wear a beautiful evening gown and mingle with the social elite. It would be a dream come true." She sighed sentimentally before snapping back to reality. "Oh my goodness, did you and Rachel get jobs as hostesses or waitresses at that party? Wow, this is incredible. I'm so proud of both of you. Just imagine my daughter mingling with all those high society folks." Linda marveled at the picture forming in her mind. "No, Mom. Rachel and I aren't working as staff. We're invited guests," Stacy said, brimming with pride and excitement. "What's more, we'll be seated at the main table because Dad is the guest of honor. It's a surprise for him, but the organizers will give him special recognition. Dad is the guest of honor, so he'll be seated at the head table. The organizers will give him special recognition, which is amazing. I'll even be part of the ceremony." Stacy's voice was bubbling with nervous excitement. Linda was utterly taken aback. "You must be joking," she said. "Stacy, you're joking, right? I mean, why would a humble cost control clerk be invited to such an esteemed event, let alone as the guest of honor? That doesn't happen in real life. Come on, admit it, you're pulling my leg, right?" "Well, yes, of course, Mom." Stacy chuckled. "Rachel and I dress up just to wait for your call and tease you." She smiled. "Let's be real, Mom. A lot has changed since you left. We were all pretty devastated, but Dad managed to pull us together, even Josh, and somehow built a new life for us without you. I should catch you up on what's happened since you left." Stacy glanced at her watch. "We'll need to do this quickly though, as the limo with Fiona and Josh will be back in about 15 minutes. In a few minutes, we'll need to leave." Stacy took a deep breath to calm herself before continuing. "When he found out about you and that guy you disappeared right after he confronted you, your dad was practically shattered. I think you were planning to leave anyway, but you just had to speed things up at this point." Stacy interrupted, whispering, "I'm sorry, but I didn't realize you knew what went down between your dad and me. But yeah, after he found out, I felt I had to leave. What was the point in staying? He even had photos of us, Frank, and had decided to leave the city and moved into his Manhattan apartment." She sighed. "I'm sorry, your dad told me." Stacy yelled, unable to hold back her frustration, "You didn't tell us everything, Mom. I took those photos, not your dad. I came home that day and everything was quiet except for some weird noises from your room. I told Rachel to wait downstairs while I went up to check. That's when I saw you and took the photos myself. Then we left and hung out with friends. By the time we got back, you were crying in your room. The next morning, you were gone." Stacy took a deep breath, fighting back her emotions. "The last memory I have of you was seeing you with him. I didn't need therapy to erase those images. I'm grateful you did at least cover up before I took the pictures, or I'd still be in therapy today. I can't believe you betrayed me like that, Stacy," Linda exclaimed, a mix of frustration and disbelief in her voice. Stacy tried to remain calm, but she was still angry. "Mom, now isn't the time to argue about who betrayed whom. Let's not trade barbs," she said. "I could say a lot more, but this conversation isn't about that. It's about catching you up on the past 3 years." Linda could hear the maturity in her daughter's voice. For the first time, she realized that rebuilding a relationship with her children would require taking responsibility for her actions. It wouldn't be easy, and it would take more than gifts or occasional visits to fix things. If she wanted a future with her kids, she would need to face the truth, listen to their feelings, and acknowledge the consequences of her choices. "Stacy, you're right," Linda said softly, her voice filled with regret. "One day, we'll need to sit down and talk about it. Let's talk about it. I'm trying to reach out, which is a good first step. So, tell me how your lives have been since I left." Stacy couldn't wait to tell her mother. "Mom, you wouldn't believe it. It's like something out of a novel or a fairy tale. After you left, Dad went through a rough patch. I used to have to wait outside when we came home because I was scared of what I might find. When we came home, I was scared of what I might find. Every phone call made me jump, thinking it was bad news. Josh was struggling, and I was trying to hold everything together. Then one day, Dad started reading books on how to deal with grief and heartbreak. He poured his emotions into writing, and I think that really helped him." Stacy paused, then added, "Smile, and remember how overweight Dad was. Well, he started running every morning and using the treadmill. He even dusted off the weights. He really turned his life around." Linda listened, feeling the weight of Stacy's words. "I guess you don't really want to hear all this about Dad, but it's important for you to understand how our lives changed. Oh, and by the way, Dad looks pretty good." "Good." Even over the phone it was clear Stacy was smiling. "No, it's okay honey," Linda said, her voice soft. "I need to hear this. Thanks for taking care of me by telling me what's been going on. How are Rachel and Josh?" Linda looked at the photo of her daughters again, zooming in on the woman standing with them. "Who's Janice?" she asked. "Janice is Dad's girlfriend. Isn't she gorgeous? She's a former swimsuit model and still does some modeling. She helped Rachel come out of her shell and is even supporting her modeling career." Stacy perked up, remembering something. "Oh, Mom, you should pick up last month's Teen Fashion World magazine. Rachel's on the cover. She looks absolutely stunning and has become a really popular model." "How did all this happen?" "First, your father hooks up with a girl half his age. Now she's pushing your little sister into modeling for sleazy photographers. If I knew what was going on with those provocative photos, I'd speak to your father about it. I'd press charges against both your father and this Janice or whatever her name is." Linda was enraged and almost choked on her indignation. Stacy waited for a moment to let the situation come before responding softly to emphasize her point. "Mom, Dad and Janice are extremely careful. They handle all of Rachel's and my modeling work with great caution, with one of them they're always present at our shoots and they make sure the photographer signs the strict contract with D, according to the terms. Not a single photo can be taken without Dad's permission. Do you really think Dad would allow anything inappropriate? He won't even let Rachel wear a swimsuit for the shoots. And about Dad's girlfriend, as I mentioned, her name is Janice. She's 34, so there's only an 11-year age gap. There's a year between her and Dad, which is a lot less of a difference than there is between you and Frank." "How old is Frank?" 100, Stacy couldn't help but let out a little sarcasm. "Anyway, I'm not sure if they'll ever get married, but from what I've seen, they're very compatible. Janice has been a great support to Dad, and he's genuinely happy. I've never seen him this content before. That's the situation, Mom. I'm being honest about what I see and feel. Frank is. She's only 66, not as old as you seem to think." Linda interrupted, "But I'm just unsure if modeling is the right path for Rachel. I think she'd benefit more from pursuing something meaningful." Stacy bit her tongue to keep from losing her temper. She turned away from her phone and took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. After a moment, she returned to the call and continued disregarding the interruption. "Rachel's model. Her career has really helped her mom. She's much less shy now and exudes confidence that she never had before. She's finally discovered her true self, her capabilities, and what she's passionate about. Sometimes she even takes charge in the studio, suggesting creative poses for the shoots. Let's be real, Mom. Rachel was never a standout student and always saw herself as a failure, thinking her future held nothing good. But now she's on the path to becoming a top-tier fashion model. Stacy paused for a moment, then added, "Yes, I also model, but it's not my passion. Rachel and I do fashion shows together, but I'm mostly there to support her and showcase different outfits. The best part is that Rachel and I have grown closer, helping each other and collaborating. Plus, I'm making good money, enough to save for college. Don't worry, Mom. I still enjoy school and maintain good grades. In fact, I'm taking extra classes to graduate early and head to college. I've got an A average, but I'm a bit worried about chemistry this year. It's a tough class, but I need to ace it for veterinary school." Stacy brightened up, even giggling a little. "Oh, Mom. You won't believe this. Rachel and I get to keep some of the outfits from I've been doing shows and shoots, so now I've got a really cool wardrobe. I'm one of the most stylish girls in class now, not just some geek. The girls who used to think they were too cool are now asking me for fashion tips and even my autograph. It's funny though, a bit weird. Oh, and my mom says guys are starting to notice me too." Stacy giggled. Linda, who had always struggled to gain some kind of recognition in society, was deeply disturbed by this news. It seemed that Linda had left her family to chase personal recognition, but it appeared that her family had achieved remarkable success without her. This made the situation even more difficult for Linda. "I'm glad everything's going well with you and Rachel," Linda said. "By the way, I'm hesitant to ask, but how's Josh? Is he okay?" Stacy took a deep breath and glanced at the clock. She knew that Josh and Fiona would arrive soon, but she didn't want to rush through Josh's update. She wanted to get through Josh's update quickly, but she felt confident she could share it before they had to leave. "Josh has really turned things around," she said. "You know he was wild even before you left. Afterward, he partied and drank even more. Eventually, Dad got fed up and demanded that Josh either get a job or go back to school. Josh refused, so Dad kicked him out and told him not to come back until he found a job. Dad even had to call. The police were called a couple of times to get him out. What on earth made your husband throw my son out of the house? I'll have Frank contact a lawyer and sue that man." Linda raged, clutching the phone. Her anger was rising. "Good luck with that, Mom," Stacy said with a hint of irony. She knew her mother always favored Josh, letting him get away with everything. In fact, Stacy thought Josh was lucky he hadn't gotten into more serious trouble. All this happened over a year and a half ago. Since then, Josh and Dad have reconciled. Josh stayed with friends for a while, but even they got tired of his laziness and kicked him out. He spent some time on the streets, but eventually realized he didn't want that life, especially after seeing us doing well. So, Josh apologized to Dad and asked to come home. Dad agreed, but only if Josh got a job first. If Josh got a job first, he found work on a roofing crew. After that, he moved back in. Dad also made him contribute to living expenses to teach him responsibility. Stacy chuckled. It's actually funny hearing him complain about his tough job and having to pay bills. But Dad always says that's how the real world works, and Josh needs to get used to it. "Lie still seething," he said. "Don't tell me your father has another girlfriend." Stacy laughed. "No, Mom. Fiona is Dad's personal assistant. She's sharp-tongued and doesn't tolerate any nonsense. Dad calls her his cool boss, even though she's only 22. She's really competent and reliable." They met at a conference in Minneapolis, and she impressed him by confidently shaking his hand and offering to organize his business trips, book tickets, and manage his expenses. Dad hired her on the spot. Now she lives with us, and Dad jokes about having his Stacy laughed again. Fiona's been really important to Dad's career. She's like a big sister to us and we all love her. Oh, And Mom Fiona is gorgeous. She's from Norway, about 5 feet 9 inches with a trendy short haircut, blonde hair and piercing light blue eyes. Josh fell for her, but Fiona made it clear she wasn't interested in dating someone without direction. Stacy's tone turned more serious. That's when Josh finally got 4 months ago. Josh enlisted in the Air Force. He's going to language school in Monterey, California. Language school? What language? Linda gasped. Russian. Stacy replied quietly, chuckling at her mother's shock. Isn't it wild? Josh is stationed at Lackland Air Force Base right now, waiting for clearance. Dad asked him to come home for the party, throwing in his honor. Oh, and Fiona's been treating him more gently. Lately, though, she still won't admit they're together, but we can all tell she's falling for him too. Josh is so smitten. Now he's planning to finish language school, go to college, get a degree and become an officer. Can you believe it? Mom, Josh, the wild child, now wants to be a military officer. For anyone who knew him before, it sounds unbelievable. Love sure does strange things, doesn't it? Stacy smiled, gesturing with her slender stiletto-heeled. While they were talking about her brother's future plans, a deep voice singing the impossible dream suddenly came through the background. Stacy laughed, jumped off the bed and ran into the hallway. Mom, you've got to hear this, she said, holding the phone towards the voice. At the same time, female voices joined in with excited howls and giggles, followed by Rachel's laughter. Dad was singing my favorite song, and Janice joined in. Stacy teased her dad, why don't you take that act on the road? The bus leaves in 10 minutes. Ed's voice, filled with mock indignation, broke through the girls' laughter. Girls, you're eliminating me. No respect in my own family. I've had it. You're all off my Christmas list. Another burst of laughter followed, along with a chorus of "We love you, Daddy." All right, you're back on the list, Stacy said. She still giggled as she returned to her conversation. Dad's a riot. He sings when he's happy or nervous, and we always egg him on. It's our little game with him. That's all Linda could manage. She was unable to say more. Subconsciously, she had hoped her family was still struggling without her, but seeing them thrive left her speechless and somewhat dazed. Stacy picked up on the thread of the conversation. Dad doesn't know he's going to be the guest of. I think we should honor him tonight, but he's already a bit nervous. He and Jack McTaggart are going to play a couple of guitar duets with the band. You know how Dad is with his blues guitar. Since he and Jack became friends, they've been jamming almost every week. They strum their guitars and share a few beers. Mom, you've got to hear their jokes about becoming rock stars. They're actually pretty good, but they jam just for fun. It's their first public gig, and I bet it'll be a blast. Just imagine Dad in a tuxedo rocking out on stage. Stacy grinned, picturing the scene. Linda was taken aback once more. Jack and Stacy were practically best buddies. Jack was the affluent and renowned head of the family, and he insisted that members of the Mercer family address him simply as Jack, rather than the formal Mr. Mercer. He turned out to be a kind and down-to-earth person, and he played a pivotal role in Ed's early writing career. Stacy confirmed that it all started when Dad wrote a couple of articles about bouncing back after a traumatic event like losing everything when your spouse cheats. Dad was over the moon when he sold a few small magazines, and they bought his articles for publication. Jack read one of the articles and reached out to Dad asking him to give a motivational speech at a MCT Tag Corporation employee meeting. Dad nearly had a heart attack when he got the offer, but he put together a talk based on his articles and gave it at the meeting. It went down really well, and Jack was pretty pleased. Dad got lots of nice comments and was even asked to speak at their annual shareholders meeting. After that, offers to speak at other events started coming in, and everything just fell into place. Dad started writing more and more, and his articles got published in bigger magazines. Eventually, he quit his job to focus on writing full-time. Jack also introduced him to important people and their shared love for blues and rock guitar, which brought them even closer. Stacy paused, letting her mother digest the story. It was quite a turn of events. Your father is now a writer, and an author, and a published writer. Linda struggled to grasp the idea for once underachieving ex-Jack was finding success, and she secretly hoped it didn't pay too well. She could hear activity on the first floor. Guests had started to arrive, and there was the muffled chatter of conversation and laughter. A deep male voice stood out among the others, along with a softer female voice. Stacy watched as Janice left Rachel's room and headed downstairs. She was likely to greet the new arrivals as hostess. Stacy suddenly remembered a task she had forgotten. "Mom, I've got to leave soon. Jack and Mona McTaggart are already here, along with photographers for the newspapers, gossip columns, and the special photo album they produce every year. There's always a huge photo spread capturing the enchanted moments at their summer evening affair. Personally, I find it a bit over the top, but the sales raise significant funds for charity, so it serves a noble purpose and we, the participants, get to bask in the warmth of all that goodwill." Despite her sarcasm, Stacy felt a sense of pride that her father's accomplishments had elevated their family to a level of social status deserving of respect, especially from her estranged mother. Linda quickly defended the high society tradition, saying, "Oh Stacy, don't underestimate this. It's a great honor to be featured in that album. You and Rachel should be thrilled to be guests. You'll be seated at the main table, so your photos will be all over the place. I've bought one of those albums every year, and this year I'll show off pictures of Josh, you, and Rachel. I'll say, look at these special people. They're my children. I'm actually quite envious, but at the same time I'm immensely proud. I'll definitely be ordering several copies as soon as they're available." "Okay, Mom," Stacy here replied absent. "I then remembered that Dad is supposed to be at a writing event in New York over the Labor Day weekend. Rachel, Janice, and I are planning to join him. Maybe we could see you then? I'd really like that. I'm sure I could convince Rachel to come too, though she's still angry with you for leaving. Maybe we'll bring Janice along so you can meet her. You'd probably also want to see Dad just in case." "Oh, sweetheart, that's a fantastic idea." Linda agreed. "Let's consider the options. I'd really like to see you and Rachel. As for your dad and his girlfriend, I'm not sure it's such a good idea. There's been too much pain on both sides. However, I'd love for you to meet Frank. After all, he's your stepfather now." Linda said that upon hearing that. Stacy made a gagging gesture and stuck her tongue out, looking disgusted. "No way. I still have nightmares about you and Frankie snoodling up, so the only way I'd meet him is if Dad and Janice are there too. That seems fair to me." Linda wasn't pleased with that. Her daughter's reaction, but tried to hide her feelings to keep the conversation going. "Okay, let's see how things go. Stacy, but let's not lose sight of our shared goal to finally reunite. I can't wait to see you and Rachel again, so let's focus on that, honey." By the way, Linda added that the New York Literary Guild is hosting a Meet the Author event on Labor Day weekend and Frank is using his influence to get tickets for us to attend. "I'll push him to get tickets for all of us." She was excited by the prestigious the gala is shaping up to be quite the event. Many renowned writers will be there, some signing their books and engaging with readers. You might even get a selfie with one of the famous authors. Frank is really excited. David V.S. himself promised to attend. Frank is eager to meet him. He says David's debut novel is brilliant. Stacy responded, amused. She said she'd met him several times. She agreed his work is thought-provoking. "I read his book a while ago." Linda was surprised by Stacy's comment but didn't respond. "I haven't read it myself. It's not really my type of book, but Frank is a big fan." Stacy laughed and said her mom probably wouldn't like it because it doesn't have enough pictures. "Have a hardcover or paperback copy of David's book handy." Linda glanced around, then walked into Frank's office. "Yes, we have the hardcover here on Frank's desk." "Why do you ask?" "Look at the back and side of the dust jacket and tell me what you see." Linda opened the book and examined the jacket. "There's a photo of the author. Oh my goodness, it's Ed. This is a photo of your father that I took 7 or 8 years ago. Oh Lord, how can this be? It can't be David vs. It's your father, not David vs. Please tell me this is some sort of mistake. Stacy doubled over with laughter, trying not to choke as the irony of the situation hit her. There's no way. Oh, that's a mistake. Yes, David vs. is actually Edward J. Mercer. When Dad decided to pursue writing, he created a pseudonym and published his first novel under the name David vs. It's pretty funny, right? Stacy could barely speak, tears of laughter in her eyes. Just think, your new husband's favorite author is actually your ex, Stacy. It's hilarious. I haven't laughed this hard in ages. They could make a movie out of this. It's too unbelievable. Linda sat there devastated and finally muttered, crap. Stacy, still chuckling, said, I have to go, Mom. I'll send you my email address, and we can plan for Labor Day weekend. I'm really glad you called. I do want to see you again. I love you, Mom. This is just too funny. In an almost inaudible voice, Linda replied, say hi to your brother and sister for me and give them my number. So they can give me a call when they get a chance. I love you too, Stacy. Her eyes opened slowly. Karma is truly a vengeful thing. She hadn't fully processed the conversation with Stacy when Frank practically skipped into the room. Linda, you won't believe what happened, Frank said. I just got a card from David vs., he continued. I wrote to him telling him how much I enjoyed his book and how much I'm looking forward to seeing him in September. He actually responded and wrote the message himself. Can you imagine? Wait, I'll read it to you now. Frank pulled out the card and began to read it aloud, grinning from ear to ear. Dear Frank, I'm really happy that you read and liked my first novel. You've had a big impact on my life and career. Thank you so much for that. I'll be able to thank you in person soon. Your support has made a big difference to me as a writer. I'm really grateful to you. David vs. in his ecstatic joy. Frank babbled on, I must have met David once. His photo in the book looks familiar, but I can't remember where I've seen him. I can't wait to meet him in person. Maybe we'll become friends. Linda's mood continued to spiral downward. His words sunk deeper into her mind, amplifying the irony of the situation. Finally, in a tired voice, she muttered, Shut up, Frank. Just shut up. Story 2, page 26. I saw a guy who looked to be about 23 at my family reunion. I also noticed an older woman helping my stepbrother take my grandmother to one of the picnic tables. She was chatting and laughing with them for a while. I didn't know who she was or why she was at my family reunion, but I hoped she wasn't related to me. She had curly hair that draped her feminine shoulders. She also played a few games of volleyball with me and my siblings and cousins. I also met one of my uncles, who I introduced myself to afterwards. She told me her name was Maureen. She works as a nurse's aide for the elderly in the area, and my grandma was one of her clients. My grandma asked Maureen to change her schedule this week, just so she could attend the reunion, and she did. This woman seemed really caring and genuine. She was active, smart, helpful, caring, beautiful, all the things I want in my future spouse. Maureen said she was keen to meet the rest of her family because she'd told her a lot about us. She smiled and tucked her hair behind her ear, which is when I asked her to dinner the following Thursday, and she said yes. During this time, I was at the same tech school as my brother and cousin. My fiancé hung out with the three of us a lot. They teased me about us being inseparable, but I was happy. After dating for 2 years, I bought a ring and planned a surprise party to propose to her. One random night, my grandma called her and asked her to come over because she was feeling sad and alone. Of course, she showed up, walked in, turned on the lights, and found my family mixed with some of hers standing around us. I was down on one knee proposing, and she said yes. We celebrated and started planning our happy-go. My fiancée put a lot of her own money into the wedding, which made me feel good. It showed me that she was serious about me and our future together. She kept working during this time, but she started coming home late about 5 months before the wedding. When I asked her why, she said it was because of an old male client who was calling her. He was being stubborn. One morning, I got to work and realized my phone hadn't been charging overnight for some reason. I didn't have a charger with me, so I just texted my soon-to-be wife to let her know my phone was going to die, but that she could contact me via email or by calling the office. My phone died before she replied, and I didn't hear from her at all, so I went to work as usual on the day in question. When I got to the house, I saw my stepbrother's car. He was loading an 8-foot ladder into the back seat. He told me the ceiling fan had fallen down in our dining room that day. His wife, Maureen, called to have him replace it. She was sweeping the kitchen when I walked in. She was relieved to see me. She said it nearly hit her when it fell. I was glad my brother knew how to install the new ceiling fan because it was way over my fiancé's head. No pun intended. Life was pretty great and all was well until the week before the wedding. My fiancée had told me she planned to take off work for 6 weeks, some paid vacation, some not. Her time off was to start on the Monday before the wedding. When that day came, her alarm went off at 6 a.m. morning. She started getting ready for work and I asked her why. She told me that her elderly male client needed her and that her boss couldn't find anyone to cover the shift. I was really upset, but I didn't know how to express it because her reasoning was so selfless. I accepted it, but I told her I hoped she wouldn't be home late. It was bad enough that I was going to miss time with her, and the wedding was on Saturday. She supposedly worked until Friday morning, the day before our wedding. On this day, she told me she didn't have to work and she was going to have a bachelorette party. I was surprised because I didn't know she had any friends. She was a responsible working lady who had been committed to me and living with me for almost 3 years. She said she was hanging out with a friend, but we only ever did stuff together or with family. I asked who was hosting it and she said a girl's name. I was surprised because she was friends with this girl on social media. I asked how long she'd been planning it and she said it was just that morning. She said her friend called her and suggested it, along with an apology for not thinking of it sooner. I thought that was strange, so I asked for her friend's phone number or if I could see her phone, but my future wife refused. She said that after all this time, I could trust her to be worthy of the wife title. She didn't look trustworthy to me. She looked me in the eye when she said it. She was putting her phone in her purse and heading out the door, reassuring me that she wouldn't do anything to jeopardize our relationship, not after putting so much money into the wedding. I didn't like that that was her reason for not doing anything stupid. She didn't say it was. I had a feeling something terrible was happening because I hadn't heard from her for hours. I needed help to figure it out, so I drove to my stepbrother's house. I was really worried when I saw my wife's car parked next to his. Everything was quiet when I pulled up. The door was locked, but the blinds in the glass sliding door to the bedroom had gaps in them. I could clearly see them having sex. I started pounding on the glass and yelling at them. They heard and saw me right away. My brother just kept cursing and trying to get his robe on. My not-so-trustworthy fiancée slid off the bed to hide behind it. She was on the floor, taking the blanket with her. He finally let me in because he didn't feel like he had a choice. I punched him square on the jaw. He twisted and fell back, crashing on the end table. My fiancée called me crazy, saying I wouldn't get away with tackling him in his own home. I called her a few choice words. She said that if she was worth anything, she wouldn't be here doing this. She was nothing but a cheat who didn't deserve a husband. She also had the nerve to say that she only started talking to my brother because I was boring. I quickly put up a mental wall. I didn't need to hear what this girl thought of me. The truth was that she started looking at him the same day she met me. She was probably seeing him behind my back for at least several months. She was dishonest and a waste of time. She didn't know which man she wanted, so she was dumb enough to lie and sleep with both. This went on before I even met my fiancé. In the meantime, my stepbrother and I hadn't been in touch. I was just busy with work and wedding planning and didn't think much of him. I had no idea that during that time my fiancée was telling him that she was having doubts about the wedding and lied about moving back in with her parents. He told me this as soon as he could. As soon as we made contact, I asked him why he didn't try to reach out to me and why he chose to start sleeping with my fiancée instead. He said he couldn't tell me how sorry he was that he was careless. Before stepping outside, he screamed at my fiancée that she lied to him. She told me that. It turned out that he was the one who was lying. He said that he had actually tried to seduce her on the night she called him about the ceiling fan. I realized at this point that the wedding we had planned for tomorrow wasn't going to happen. Our relationship was over and I didn't have to listen to any of this. As I left, she called my name 9 times. I wondered how many times she'd slept with him behind my back. I went home and added locks to the inside of the doors. I'd paid for this place and I was relieved I didn't have to divorce her and fight for it in court. I put all her stuff outside the window and figured if she wanted it, she'd grab it. Before it rained, she turned up, shocked to find she couldn't unlock the door with her key. She started kicking the door and actually broke the window before realizing her stuff was sitting outside already. I called the police and she was charged with criminal mischief since she was seen on the security camera throwing the porch chair into the window. Even before the dust settled, she tried convincing my stepbrother to let her move in, but he refused. I knew she deeply regretted her life choices at this point. She had just spent at least $3,000. She left me 7 voicemails in 3 months, saying she was sorry and sounding sad. My grandma said she was fired from her job, but I don't know why. I know she cared about her job, and I don't think she'd be okay after this. I don't know where she went, but I don't think I'll see her at the grocery store. This story shows how relationships can become complicated when trust is broken. It highlights the importance of being honest and shows the impact this can have on people. It also reflects the emotional pain and disappointment people face when trust is broken and the need for self-forgiveness and recovery after such traumatic events. Story 3. My girlfriend and I were together for almost 6 years. I'm a 29-year-old male and I met my girlfriend, who is 31 years old. I was at Walmart with my girlfriend. We were both single and didn't have kids. We were in the fast checkout. She was short $20 for her stuff because her debit card had a hold on her account. I overheard the situation, so I paid for it. She was really embarrassed and thankful to me. She asked me for my contact information so she could pay me back. A few days later, she texted me to ask how I could receive an electronic transfer. I told her I'd rather see her in person and treat her to her favorite beverage. It worked like a charm. We met at a bubble tea shop and talked for hours. There was something about her that made me feel like I could trust her and tell her my innermost thoughts. We bonded as if it was what nature intended. She helped me get through my father's untimely death and made sure I stayed in the present moment. I never knew how great it was to have a long-term romantic relationship before I met her. Before I met her, I'd never been in a long-term romantic relationship. She was my first for a lot of things. She was a caseworker for a nonprofit organization for battered women and she was living with her mom, who was also her partner in the past. This might have played a part in her distrusting perspective that she had yet to show me when I asked her to. She moved in with me after a few weeks. It was a shock because we'd been talking every day for a year and a half and then suddenly nothing. I felt sick, like I'd done something wrong and wasted my time and energy. When she arrived, she'd brought flowers and apologized. She said she was scared to move in with a man. I could see that her career had been filled with troubling relationship stories. She'd had to get away from bad men. She was thankful that she'd never found herself in that situation, but now she was about to take a chance with me. I told her I understood why she was worried, but we could take it one day at a time. Up until this point, there was no reason for her to be afraid. We lived together for 4 years, so at this point we've been together for over 5 years. I was certain she was the woman for me. She, on the other hand, was changing over the course of time. She became very relaxed while living with me. She let her guard down and she was eating junk food every night, which was a bad habit. After the first 3 days, I mentioned it to her. I was nice about it, but I just wondered if I'd only been able to stay fit and healthy up to that point in my life because I'd avoided junk food like the plague and only ate within a certain. One day, she was eating chips with her mouth full and glared at me. She said she didn't want to be parented by me. I was surprised because I'd never seen her take anything so critically. What's the point in having a spouse if they can't help you with their own advice and experiences? I told her, but she said she just had to trust me to do what's right for her. She was eating junk food all the time and I didn't like that. It felt like she was writing herself a get-out-of-jail-free card. She kept eating like this and gained 30 pounds in 3 months. I still loved her, but I started suggesting every day that we go to the gym together or go for a long walk around the neighborhood. She said she didn't feel like it after working all day or week and eventually told me to stop asking. She said I wasn't her parent and went on to say that she'd found more support on Reddit for her body type than I'd ever given her. I told her I still loved her and wouldn't give up on her. She wanted me to believe she was just looking at her phone, so she left it on the floor and went to the bathroom. When she came back, her phone was working again. I opened it and saw apps I didn't know she had. I clicked on one, which was a dating app. There were messages between her and several other men, all of them telling her how beautiful she was. She was sending them messages saying how beautiful she was and how they'd sleep with her if they ever got the chance. I got so sick to my stomach that I ran to the kitchen sink before she was done in the bathroom. I went back to her phone and kept reading. She was sending pictures to multiple men whenever they'd asked for it. I took screenshots but didn't have time to send them to myself. When she came out of the bathroom and asked why I was on her phone, I told her to leave. I was really angry and started recording the conversation on my phone. I had planned to keep the screenshots and wait a while before sharing them, but I realized there was no point since we weren't married and I owned the house. I had to remove her from the situation because she was becoming a liability. I told her that if it weren't for her disrespectful and unwilling attitude, I would have given her a chance, but it was clear that she did not care about me or our relationship. I told her the names of some of the men she was talking to on her phone, and then I considered what she did to be. When she realized how serious I was, she stared at me like an innocent deer in the headlights. She calmly walked over to my 4-pound console, unplugged it and carried it to the window. She looked at me and dared me to keep messing with her. I told her I wasn't messing and that if she destroyed my console, she'd have to pay. She thought about it for a moment, her eyes locked on mine, while holding the console out the window with one hand. She used her phone to call her mom as soon as she started whining and crying. I tried to grab the console out of her hand, and she dropped it. Fortunately, there was an old trampoline in the backyard. The neighbor had put it there, intending to throw it away. The 4BS bounced a little, but were fine. My girlfriend started accusing me of attacking her while she was on the phone to her mom. That's why it's so important to have cameras inside the house. There was evidence that I hadn't touched her, and I had to show it to the police. Her mom filed a report against me. She was acting like a child instead of the grown woman she is, and thought she was when I asked her to move in with me that night. Her mom came to get her angry with me for something I never did. I got all her stuff to the front door for them. I was just glad to be rid of her. The police report was a little nerve-wracking. I was really upset because I'd heard stories about women falsely accusing their spouse and getting them arrested. I didn't do anything wrong, though, and that didn't happen to me. This girl went back to living with her mother, who fed her ego and selfishness. She quit her job helping other women, claiming it was because she'd been through it herself. This girl had no idea she was the terrible person she believed me and other people were. She had a man that truly. This story shows how relationships can go wrong. It starts with kindness and trust but ends with deceit and betrayal. It also shows how important communication, setting boundaries and mutual respect are in relationships. The main character's decision to end the relationship and focus on their own well-being also raises questions of personal responsibility and autonomy. It shows how important it is to respect yourself and protect yourself from being betrayed.